Most people don't know that your genetics can actually help you lose weight. When you're eating in alignment with your genetic profile, your body runs the way it was meant to run. What does that mean for you? Much easier weight loss and greater levels of health. Today, we'll be chatting with Dr. Phyllis Pobee, a triple board certified MD who has actually used this new science to lose over 100 pounds herself. Because of her own experience, she now offers these life altering solutions to other people who have struggled with weight loss. Dr. Pobee, I was wondering if you might be willing to share with us just a little bit more about your own personal journey and what kinds of things were game changers for you. I mean, your story is really inspiring.
No, thank you so much. It was a lot of ups and downs for me. I think a lot of people don't talk about how grief and stress and trauma can contribute to initial weight gain. And that was something that I had to work through even after understanding my genetics. My genetics was great because it helped me fix my mindset. Finally getting results made me stop the self-blame and that I'm not good enough and I'm not I don't have the knowledge to do the right things for my body. And so when things started working, I could change my mindset and be more positive. But then there's always these things that kind of come back up, that negative, because we practice that negative self-talk for years and years. And I think it's important to realize the power of positive self-talk, how we can actually heal our bodies by speaking to our bodies in a positive manner. And that's something that I had to learn as I went through this process for an entire year to lose 100 pounds is the power of consistency, but how it becomes easier to be consistent when you're finally doing the things that your body has been craving. And I spent so many years just hating my body, just thinking, why can't you just do what I want you to do? And I realized my body was protecting me. I realized that my body, of course, could kill me in an instant. And all of these symptoms that I was having or cravings that I was having was because I was really and truly overfed, but undernourished. And I was dealing with a lot of nutrient deficiencies. I was dealing with a lot of hormonal imbalances. And when all of that was fixed, all of those cravings went away. All of the irritability went away. And I really just began to start to enjoy life. And that's why I founded Glean 360. And people say, well, men have weight loss issues too. And I say, well, this is for women. We deal with we deal with weight loss in a totally different way because of our hormonal issues. And just from the stressors and pressures of just being, a mom or a woman or an entrepreneur and all of these things put together. And so that is why we created this program. And that's why it's something that I'm so passionate about.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. I personally believe that there's a lot more pressure on women than men to play
Hmm.
multiple roles in the modern world. And
Hmm.
so I specialize in working with women as well, because I think that it's a different set of life events that lead us down a pathway where we don't take care of ourselves, where we put the needs of other people above our own, where we might be reluctant to spend the family money on our own health care when everybody else needs the family money too. And I think those are issues that I just don't see men struggling with as much. In general, talking in generalities, of course, there are specific exceptions to all of these rules, but I agree with you. I think women often need a different path to wellness than men do, strictly from the mindset point of view.
Yes, exactly. And I think it's important to talk about. Sometimes people think mindset's like a little woo-woo, like I just want to deal with the the objective facts, but mindset's part of it. And we know in science there's things like the placebo effect. It's well documented. And so ignoring mindset is something that is a huge piece to health and healing in any aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. So, this is one of the things that I find to be the most fascinating because we constantly tell people who are trying to lose weight, it's super simple, just eat less and exercise more. And yet, you're saying that there are cases where exercising more is absolutely the wrong answer. Tell me more about that.
Well, that was the case for me. I mean, as a physician, I was 100 pounds overweight, and I just thought I just need to do more. I need to cut out more calories. I need to exercise more. And that put me in a position where I would, of course, start binge eating because I would restrict myself so much. But then over exercise was something that was not beneficial for me at all because I found out that I have this very negative response with holding on to cortisol or cortisol spikes. So when you overexercise, there is such a thing as overexercising, and that what I would quantify as overexercise is also HIIT training. That is when you start to get into this inflammatory state, when your body is in this fight or flight state constantly. And how I like to talk about cortisol, and I'm sure some of you may have heard this, is cortisol, high levels of cortisol is great when you are running from a bear, but you shouldn't be feeling like that all day long. You do need to have moments of rest and repair. And if you're doing very strenuous exercise in the evening when your body needs to be preparing to get into that fat burning state, it actually affects your ability to get into a fat loss state and then also affects your metabolism overall.
Really? So it's worse
hmm
in the evening hours.
Definitely. Most
Oh my God.
definitely.
And that's just so important for people to know because what are most of us doing all day long? Most of us have jobs and have to go to work.
hmm
And, for many people, the only time when they can really get any exercise in is going to be in the evening. So that's really good to know that it can be a pro-con thing. And it's not necessarily true that you just need to like ditch your family, skip dinner, go to the gym. That
Exactly. Spend that
probably
time with your family. That
solution.
would be better for your cortisol. So if you are someone I would call cortisol carrier, if you're doing too much strenuous exercise, that's actually going to spike your cortisol levels, and then that's going to worsen any effects that you might be having during perimenopause or during menopause. hmm
Okay, and so then it sounds like what you're saying then is if you just get a little less stressed, because of course cortisol is our main stress chemical, if you incorporate some things in your life to help your body recover from stress, to reduce chronic pain, to maybe put some difficult relationships on the back burner for a period of time, that is actually going to do more for you if you've got that certain set of genes, right?
Exactly. And so knowing that and having that understanding that, if and also can pre-prepare you if you know you're coming into a very stressful week, you can kind of arm your arsenal, making sure that you have things that will help lower your cortisol, like ashwagandha, having magnesium that you're going to take at night, just to make sure that you are helping to bring those cortisol levels down, and so that things don't get out of hand and you're playing catch up the following week.
Mm. Wow, I think that's a really, really important message for people to hear who are trying so hard to lose weight. So thank you for bringing that up. Tell me a little bit more about how do our genetics influence things like cravings and metabolism and fat storage?
So going back to like what is a gene, I think is important. I know sometimes we just throw out terms and people might not understand that your gene is really the blueprint for every single cell in your body and how that cell operates in your body. So genes will determine how your metabolism runs, how you're craving, how many cravings you have, how what kind of foods you might crave. It also will affect things like detoxification, which I think is really important because we're exposed to so many toxins. If you have, for example, a GSTM1, GSTT1 deletion, then you are someone who I would call detox bound. So by simply having certain alterations in your genetics that don't allow you to process certain toxins properly, your body in a protective state will take these toxins and bind them in fat. So then that becomes kind of stubborn fat, and then you'll start to feel like you have um, brain fog, poor mood, irritability, and all of this is from toxin buildup. So there's so many different things that can, like you mentioned, cravings or metabolism that can affect that from a genetic standpoint, that it's almost like you're guessing if you don't have your genetic report and you're not using it effectively to understand what I call is your genetic avatar.
So this is super fascinating because detox issues are big for people with migraines because, of
hmm
course, toxins take out our mitochondria.
hmm
Mitochondria are absolutely critical for proper functioning of the brain. When cells don't have enough energy, then they're more likely to go into what we call cortical spreading depression, which is the initial event that triggers a migraine. So I'm curious about this link though between toxins and fat storage. So you're saying that toxins are stored in fat.
Adipose tissue. So if your
Okay.
body's not able to clear these toxins, they will be stored in adipose tissue. And so that's your fat cells. And that's more difficult to clear because your body doesn't want to get rid of these fat cells because they're holding on to these toxins. And there's actually been studies that
Mhm.
are showing that people that have very rapid weight loss because of some of these GLP-1s, Ozempic and Mounjaro, there's potential risk for premature dementia because of all of the assault of these toxins going to the brain. Um,
Oh,
so
so if you imagine that your fat cells are maybe like a balloon and they've got
yeah,
toxins inside, and then
right.
your body's like, hey, balloon, we need you for energy. And then those
Hmm.
toxins get released into the bloodstream as well. Your body is still challenged getting rid of them. So then they're sort of unleashed to wreak havoc in your body. Is that it?
Exactly.
Gotcha.
100% correct. So it's not necessarily just about getting rid of the fat cells, but how can we get rid of these toxins in a safe manner while you're also trying to lose weight? And so that's going through phase one, phase two, and phase three. Detoxification, phase three is elimination through the urine or stool.
Got it. Okay. So I'm curious. I wonder, well, two things really I'm wondering. Number one, I'm wondering if maybe this toxin issue is part of the reason that people plateau when they're losing weight. Is that part of it?
It is a component of it. It depends on the method that people are trying to lose weight. So I often see women plateau when they're intermittent fasting. So that more so becomes an issue of cortisol, of inflammation. If you are someone who does deal with issues with cortisol and you start fasting, your body's going to find yourself to be in this fight or flight mode and you're actually slowing down your metabolism by just eating, say, this one meal a day. So you might lose maybe 10, 15, maybe 20 pounds max, and then you hit this plateau. Where your body's not getting the necessary nutrients that it needs, and that puts it into this inflammatory state. And I often see women not break that plateau. They actually, in fact, start gaining that weight back and more, which is why I really caution women to not intermittent fast unless they have specific indications to do so from a genetic standpoint. Yeah.
Okay, and just one more follow-up on this fat storage issue. I'm super fascinated by this idea that when you're losing weight, you're also releasing toxins into your
Yeah.
body. I just feel like I have not heard very much about that.
Yes, I'll have to send you some of the literature on it, and especially having to do with the neurotoxic effect of this is
Oh, yeah.
completely fascinating. So I'll
Oh,
send that off
I
to you.
believe it. Yeah, that is crazy.
Yeah.
So, you know what I'm wondering is I wonder if that is a part of the side effects that we're seeing from some of the injectables as doctors. I mean, I'm sure you're seeing it in your
Oh
world. I
yeah.
see it even in mine. You know, you Google this stuff and they're like, oh, there's no side effects of these drugs. But as we both know, that's always what happens when new drugs
Hmm.
come out. They're like, they're safe, no problems.
Yeah.
And
And
then
then it's like,
5
just
years,
kidding.
you know, we're like, oh, actually, here's what
Hmm.
happened in the post-marketing surveillance. And then everybody starts learning what actually happened. I wonder, do you think that has anything to do with it? Or do you think these are just strictly drug side effects? What's your take on it?
No,
Oh.
definitely. There's definitely been studies that have shown that there is this neurotoxic effect from rapid weight loss, releasing these toxins and causing effects in the brain. So everything definitely has a side effect. And I know sometimes we want this rapid weight loss, but our body knows best when we have a slow, steady weight loss. It allows the body to recalibrate, allows us to safely remove toxins, and is protective to all organs in the body.
Super interesting. So, do you think that food sensitivities, things like lactose or gluten, can be some of the issues that people need to be aware of as they're trying to lose weight? Is that part of the eating in alignment with your genetics?
Most certainly, because if you are eating most like for something like gluten and you are intolerant and it's inflammatory to your gut and to to you as a whole, it causes bloating, causes irritability. You're going to be in this constant state of inflammation. And what is inflammation? Acute inflammation would be if you had, say, a cut on your hand, the body goes to repair this small cut on your hand. Great. Acute inflammation is wonderful. But chronic inflammation is when your body is chronically under attack. You're constantly eating gluten and your body is just never gets this chance to rest. You're bloated. You actually don't have the ability to repair things like cancer cells. You go down this risk for things like hypertension. You go down this risk for things like diabetes, and it's the snowball effect. So most certainly, you would be someone that I would put into the inflammatory overload genetic avatar. And I also put under that genetic avatar histamine intolerance. That's something that I'm seeing a lot in women. So some women will drink alcohol and they'll say, "Oh, I don't feel great after drinking this alcohol." And histamine, alcohol releases a lot of histamine. So really just paying, even if you don't do a food sensitivity, paying attention to how you feel after certain foods is so vital. It can give a ton of information and things that you might not necessarily think of as an allergen, things like histamine, right? And I'll say, "Well, do you have seasonal allergies?" "Oh, yes, all the time." Or "I've had eczema," or, your body's just giving you these signs that there is something wrong, but you just don't know what it is. And that's what I love about genetics. Test, don't guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I love what you're saying about your genetic avatar. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so I definitely would recommend you ladies grab my book. It's Lean Genes, and it just goes through all 12 of the genetic avatars. And I went back and looked at the hundreds of women that I've worked with and put them all into these 12 different avatars that fit my protocols. So there's dopamine driven, there's cortisol carriers, sugar shapers. What I see a lot of is inflammatory overload. Power performers is helpful to know in terms of like what type of exercise you should be doing. And so it it gives more information than, say, I know a lot of people come to me and say, "Well, what about the blood type diet?" That there's only four blood types, right? And so it's too basic to group yourself into. And I actually see people taking out certain food groups because of their blood type, which studies have shown is not enough information for you to get any real true information about nutrition and how you should be eating. But using your genetics, of course, is the story of you. Your genetics is as unique as your fingerprint. So being able to group all of those necessary SNPs into an avatar is something that is understandable for women. It's applicable, and you can always kind of come back to it and have a greater understanding of your what supplements you need, how you should be exercising, and how you should be eating.
Yeah, I love that description of it. I think it can really help people simplify what is really some very complicated stuff. And, I know that there is genetic testing available to people over the counter, essentially, commercially available. They can just go on and order it themselves. But the problem that people get into is just an absolute overwhelm of data. And they don't know what to do with it. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to who have said, yeah, I had my genetic testing done. And I said, oh, great. What did it tell you about how to reduce your migraines, to find kind of a more permanent solution so you can get off of some of your meds? And they kind of look at me funny and say, nothing. So I really love this idea of kind of encapsulating it into different avatars that people can resonate with and have kind of a concrete, simple action plan moving forward for how to tackle weight loss. And by the way, everybody, when you fix your weight, you are not just doing a cosmetic thing here. You are truly fixing the health of your body, and you are reducing your risks of so many other diseases, not just migraines, cardiovascular disease like heart attack, cerebrovascular disease like stroke, cancers. I mean, we understand that the real problem with excess weight it's not an appearance thing. It's not how you look. It's what's going on under the surface in your body and how you feel day to day. Those are the real issues that we want to help people fix. So, any further tips? If someone has just struggled with weight for years, how can they start to break that cycle of weight loss, weight gain, and get to a place where they just kind of land at a new normal?
I say stop guessing and start testing, but not like you said, just making sure that you're working with someone that understands the science of weight loss. So for example, someone like me, I am triple board certified and also certified in obesity medicine. So being able to pair that information with a real action plan, real protocols that are going to make a difference and get to the root of your weight loss resistance once and for all. I think sometimes, especially in modern medicine, it's really reactive. We get the disease and then we try to come with a cure, but let's be preventative and try to figure out what we might be dealing with in the future and how to prevent future disease. And that's what I love so much about genetic testing. So I will always highly recommend that someone go ahead, get that testing. If you want to learn more, I would definitely recommend going to geneticweightloss.com and it would give you some good first steps as well.
Awesome. That sounds like a great idea. So do you use the actual genes when you create these avatars for people?
Yes, I do. So I we have our own panel that we run, and then our panel does break off into our specific genetic avatars. But they're all based on SNPs. They're all based on SNPs that we've conducted research in order to see which avatar you would fall under.
Got it. And so
Mhm.
for those of you who may be newer to genetics, a SNP is really just a spelling mistake in your gene. So genes code for proteins, that's what they do. Genes are kind of like an instruction manual from IKEA. And then the proteins that those genes make are kind of like the dresser that you bought from IKEA. And like different instruction manuals make different kinds of furniture, exact same principle. And so these SNPs really just mean, is there a spelling mistake somewhere in your gene? And what that gene is making isn't quite right. Or if you think of it another way, if you've got really bad instruction manual and it tells you to put your dresser together upside down or something like that, that's what a SNP is analogous to. Um,
I love that.
yeah.
So good.
And I get this question a lot too. And I think it's important for everybody to know that there are 22,000 different genes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And yeah, and so you when you get any genetic testing report, they don't tell you 22,000 things. They tell
Exactly.
you 100, 200, something along those lines. So what people are doing with all of this genetics information that we have these days is filtering through it and trying to make a relevant data set for you for
Hmm.
whatever problems you're facing that you're trying to solve. So, for example, maybe for other people, their FTO gene doesn't matter very much.
Yeah.
Oh, but if your issue is weight loss, or maybe even if it's something related to managing diabetes or heart disease or yeah, saturated fat processing, then those genes do become more relevant. So it's frustrating to think that you are having to have the same data set mined again because your genes don't really change from one test to the next. But really, the way to think of it is it's what information you're getting from it. No, your genetics don't change from one test to another. But what does change is what people report on and what kind of actionable life improving strategies they're able to give you with that information. What do you think about that, Dr. Pobee?
Oh, that is perfectly put. I think I get that question a lot where it's like, here, just look at this report. And it is not applicable to the work that we're doing because we're looking at something very specific. We're looking at weight loss. There's certain variants that are not looked at in the reports that come to me. So it's just not beneficial for me to look at that. And it's not
Right.
beneficial for the client. So they're carrying around all of these reports and they want it to mean something. But unfortunately, it really is worthwhile going to the specific person that you're having the problem with so that they can order the right test for you.
Exactly. And the other
Hmm.
thing that happens too is different companies look at different SNPs.
Yep.
So, a gene is quite large. Imagine a gene as like your house that you put on Zillow. Well,
Hmm.
you could show a picture of the front door. You can show a picture of, the backyard. Like there are different ways to look at the same gene. So there are
Hmm.
different SNPs that you can test. And so that's another thing that happens when somebody's got genetic information from another company. The SNP that they took, even if it's of the same gene, the same DRD2 gene, the same FTO gene, it may not be relevant. to the disease state that you are talking about. And then if we circle back to that metabolism issue that you're talking about, you mentioned the FTO gene.
Hmm.
So I remember FTO as full to overflowing. I know that's not what it stands for, but it helps me remember what the
Yeah.
gene does, that it's
Hmm.
involved in like helping us sense when we're full. And I'm
Hmm.
also super cued into this gene because mine does not work great. So I feel like, okay, I can't change my gene, but the one thing I can do is just be aware of this problem and maybe, try to eat slower, cut my food into smaller bites,
Hmm.
or I don't know, other things like that to try to allow my fullness mechanisms to catch up to where other people's are because they're sensing their level of fullness so much more than I am.
Hmm.
Um, and so I'm curious, is that one of the genes that's involved in metabolism, or is that really just more like a, hey, I'm done eating now, or I need more food kind of a
eh,
gene?
Being able to know that variant and then that variant specific genotype will allow us to create a an eating plan for you. So if it's because it's due to increased appetite, then what I would say is protein is king, fiber is queen. So making sure that you are getting adequate amount of protein, how much protein. And then when I say fiber, really like making sure that you're not doing anything like juicing, that you are eating all your fruits and vegetables, all of those things are fiber, having big leafy salads at least once or twice a day. And then realizing, like you said, doing things that can make you feel fuller for longer. Now, if you have that in combination with say a gene like the DRD2 gene, which happens to be like the dopamine receptor issues, where a lot of women will say, I think I have ADHD. That can come about if you have like dopamine receptor issues. So, if you are having cravings, but you also have the FTO gene, it's kind of a mixed picture. So, yes, you might be having cravings and you might have a slower metabolism because you have those variants that I mentioned. But it could also be because if I had to put it plainly, like you're bored, you might be working on something, you have low dopamine, you just need a break from the work that you're doing, and then you find yourself rummaging through the fridge. There's nothing necessarily going wrong with you from a nutrient point of view or even a fullness point of view. Your dopamine is out of whack. So going upstream and fixing your dopamine by adding more tyrosine is something that can help fix your dopamine issues.
Yeah. And I think the implementation piece is key. This is not something we're taught in high school. This did not exist when you and I were in high school. And I mean, shoot, they don't even teach high school kids how to balance their checkbooks
Oh
anymore.
my
I don't even
goodness.
think they have checkbooks anymore. So
No.
it's not like
I,
this is the kind of information that everybody just knows and can sort of go
yeah.
act on. I think genetics
Hmm.
can be pretty complicated. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
You want to make sure you're incorporating daily habits that are actually going to produce the intended effect.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly. And um, to understand the information given to you, because if not, it can be very overwhelming. If you are like, does this mean I'm sick? Does this mean I'm going to be okay? So just sometimes I think it's necessary to do the due diligence to also take the time and work with someone that's going to be able to interpret it for you as well.
Yeah. And support implementing.
Yeah, exactly. And just like getting deep, it's like you always want to just get deeper. What's the root cause? What's really happening? Is it really that my estrogen is low, or am I having like issues with detoxification? Am I having issues with my liver? Because a lot of people that don't realize that a lot of hormone issues can come with issues with how your liver is working and how your liver is producing some of your hormones as well. Your liver has a huge part to do with hormone regulation. So that all can tie in. So it's impossible to just look at one organ and be like, this is the answer. Everything ties together. It always comes back around together.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something that I think we don't pay much attention to in neurology. We tend to think that, the brain is its own separate thing. It's not really
The
attached
brain is
to the
pretty
rest.
important though. That's why we need you guys. We're like, just, we don't know what they're doing over there, but it's good.
Yeah, but I think we
Yeah.
forget like it's connected to everything else,
Yeah.
actually. You
You
can't
guys are
just
doing a
like,
good thing.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here this evening. How can people find you if they want more information about how to get started for themselves?
Yeah, so we have actually a free virtual events, you can head to genelean360.com and just head on there. If you want to just watch and learn more about genetics, head there. And then if you just want to kind of poke around, I'm a poker. I like to kind of click on things and read about what's her story, where is she from, then I would go to geneticweightloss.com. And then if you just were like, what's this genetic avatar thing all about? Head to geneticavatar.com and check that out, and you will be able to get a sense of what your avatar might be. Of course, the only way we'll know for sure is through genetics, but it'll introduce the avatars. And then please get my book. You can go to geneticweightlossbook.com and grab the book and then learn a lot more about these protocols and these avatars.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. I
You're
appreciate you being
welcome.
here this evening.